and welcome to Behind the Screen, your unique opportunity to look inside the mind of a DM as we prepare for Season 3 of D&D with high school students. Now, as you should know, I don't like screens, so I'm going to take this foolishness down. But seriously, have you ever wondered what a DM goes through or thinks about when trying to make a campaign? This video is going to be an opportunity to kind of gaze into my mind. I'm going to narrate my inner monologue, my thought process, as I begin to piece together the elements for D&D with high school students Season 3. So if you've been watching the Season 3 content so far, you'll know who the cast members are. You'll know what characters they're making. But now, what do we do? What do we do? No, seriously, I'm asking you guys, what do we do? No, I'm just kidding. So here's where we start, right? This is unplanned. There's no script. I'm working through the campaign right now. And here's where I am. I have a notepad, this right here. This is where I'm going to take notes. I have a player's handbook, I have a DM's guide, and I have all the characters for Season 3. I have notes on my laptop about the world. So here's where we're at. We are going to be starting this adventure in the righteous domain of Kabul Kailish. So if you watch Season 2, that is the setting on the island continent of New Whitmire, where the Season 2 cast had their adventures. We will be on Season 3 on that same continent, in the same kingdom, and that is the righteous domain of Kabul Kailish. So let me tell you a little bit about that, and I'm telling you about it so that I'm also refreshing my memory. So as a DM, whether you're playing someone else's published material or you've invented your own, before you start piecing your story together, know your world. Know your world. So the righteous domain of Kabul Kailish is located in the south of the continent. It is a government type of theocracy. The ruler is His Holiness Kor Paigambar. He is a male dragonborn. His honorary title is also the Chosen of Water. So he's a dragonborn who is also a paladin and has a history of connections with the water goddess Vusek. And you may remember Vusek from Season 2. So that's part of the connection to where the setting will be placed. As far as races go, because of its kind of central southern location between multiple kingdoms, Kabul Kailish is a melting pot. So there are a lot of different races there. Humans, elves, halflings, half-elves, half-orcs, gnomes, dwarves, dragonborn, and tiefling. The area, the physical geographical area, is about 1,000 miles, and the total population is about 65,000. As far as settlements go, there's one capital city, one fortified city, one town, one village, and a bunch of hamlets. So there's a lot of open space, in other words. And part of that is connected to the nomadic communities in Kabul Kailish. And if you watch the summer sessions, you may remember the dwarven barbarian horde called the Quoshin. They are one of the nomadic communities in Kabul Kailish. So there's a lot of open space between the settled areas. All right, let's talk about locations. So you may remember, I'm actually going to switch to another document so that I can reference this. So the capital city is Poitext Shahar. And if you watch the summer sessions, that's where the adventurers were escorting the princess, who is the niece of Kor Paigambar, to the capital. So she had gone to Dario Lar Shari for the summer wine festival, and then was basically going to be headed back to the capital. And the summer sessions group escorted her back through dangerous outland terrain and past a barbarian horde to the capital of Poitext Shahar. So this group will be kind of starting in the capital. They're starting off in Poitext Shahar. It's a vast metropolis with the most diverse population on the island. The population is about 50,000. So for you new DMs, the Dungeon Master's Guide can be a great resource. And I'm going to kind of show you, if you're not familiar with how to build settlements, one of the nice things that this book provides is how to build settlements, basically. And they talk about sizes of different places. Here we go. So if you're following along, I'm on page 112. So there are a lot of different tables for generating settlements. This is for random stuff, but you can generate not only like what kind of a settlement it is, but their race relations, their ruler's status, notable traits, what it's known for, the current calamity if there's something bad going on in that place. There's also random building generators, tavern name generators. So it's really fantastic for starting DMs to, you know, if you're not sure what to build or how to build a small, you know, well, sometimes building a world can be overwhelming. I've talked about that in other videos. So maybe just pick a thing, generate a place, and, you know, figure out adventures from there. But this is a great resource. In other words, for considering how to build, you know, if you're not familiar with what you want, that's a great resource for just kind of randomly rolling up, or even if you don't want to roll, you could just pick stuff out, right? So let me go to crafting a multiverse. That would be more like you want to create an entire massive thing. You don't need to do that necessarily. So now I'm going to cut back to mapping your campaign, which is on page 14 of the DM's guide. So there's kingdom scale, continent scale, settlements, what's the purpose. So they ask some kind of important leading questions that help you think about developing this stuff. What purpose does the settlement serve? How big is it? Who lives there? What does it look like, smell like, etc. Right? And then if you turn the page, now we're on page 16 and 17, they talk about the size of settlements. So a village is listed as up to 1,000 people. And then they kind of break down by population, government, defense, commerce, and organizations. Just some basic things with a description. So you have a village, you have a town, that goes up to 6,000 people. You have a city, which can go up to 25,000 people. So when I looked at these, I was like, all right, so they give you 3 options, but I needed more. And so I came up with hamlet, which is just smaller than a village, right? So a hamlet could be 40 people, or it could be 200 or 400, right? But it's you know, somewhere between hamlet and a village, you know, or somewhere between just like a lone outpost and a village. I wanted to have something else that could be a smaller version of a village. So I came up with hamlet. And when you're making a map, you don't necessarily have to have all this stuff planned out. You could populate hamlets and scatter them in wherever you want. Typically what I tried to do when I came up with New of Whitmire, and then I came up with the kingdoms, within each kingdom I tried to have like maybe 5 distinct places, right? Typically like a capital, and then a few other cities or maybe some towns, and then a couple of villages. But I don't feel like you have to have every single village mapped out. What I did was I kind of thought about feature villages. So, for example, with Season 2 of D&D with high school students, Dariolar Shari is really, it's just a village. It's not all that important. Sorry, it's a town. It's a little bigger than a village. But what made it special was its geographical location. So it's a port. It's on the southern tip of the island, and there's waterways that go up into land, upland, and then down towards the ocean. And so I thought of it as being kind of a good trade nexus, which, you know, brings together lots of different people. So there's a port. And the other feature I added to it was, I was like, well, you know, sometimes things spring up around a feature, a place, right? So in this case, I thought the Temple of Vusake would be a great feature to add to this town, to give it some unique characteristic. which then in turn sprung up other ideas. So when you're building towns and when you're thinking about locations for your game, if you create just one town even, that could be the start of 20 different stories and adventures. So Dariolar-Shari being a town, and I'll read to you kind of the original description and see if this matches up with what you experienced as audience members for Season 2. Dariolar-Shari sits on its own island with freshwater rivers on both sides and the ocean to the south. So that's the geographical location part. It is a trade center, a fishing hub, and it boasts some of the best vineyards on the entire island. There's also a renowned temple to the water goddess there. That's it. Literally, my notes about Dariolar-Shari are one paragraph. Now, I have a separate document where I flesh out more about the town, all right, including its local government and that kind of stuff. But if you don't want to get into that much detail, you don't have to. Just have the roots of whatever makes that place important enough to write something down about. Now, let's go back to the capital. So, Poitex Shahar. This is the capital city of Kabul Kailish. It's a vast metropolis with the most diverse population on the island, and the population is about 50,000. That's a big city. That's a very, very big city. So when you look at the population being 50,000, that means that the majority of the entire kingdom's population is in that one city. It's an anchor for the entire kingdom of Kabul Kailish, because the total population is about 65,000. So 50,000 people live in the capital, live in or around the capital. Okay. What else do I have in Kabul Kailish? So Kadimki Kala was once a huge city, and it was destroyed centuries ago. Over time, a new city was built over the ruins and now sits as a large fortified city and keep. Those who man the keep are monks trained in martial arts who demonstrate incredible abilities. So this once huge city is now kind of just more of an outpost on the scale of maybe a town, or actually more like a village, really. There aren't that many residents who live there. It's mostly just kind of a defensive location with the keep. You already know about Dariolar-Shari. Then I decided that I wanted to populate 2 more places in Kabul Kailish. So one of those was Yashirin Mabad. And this is a village on the eastern side of the country, mostly agricultural in nature. The village is noted for hosting the monks who guard and protect Mukadas Suv, the sacred lake. The monks live in a small temple somewhere in the village, though nobody knows for sure where it is. It is also said that the monks keep a vigil for other things. So I left a little mystery. I have some ideas. And I do have a note about Mukadas Suv. So Mukadas Suv is a small freshwater lake on the eastern side of Kabul Kailish. It is only used for drinking. It's never used to water crops or for any animal husbandry whatsoever. The people consider it a holy site. So obviously, of the 5 deities of Nuoth Otmai, Vusaik has a strong hold over the people of Kabul Kailish. They venerate Vusaik and the water goddess. They have this sacred lake that is guarded by a group of monks, and so it kind of ties into the essence of the setting. Now, that doesn't mean that I couldn't employ adventures involving the other gods, right? So I could do that, and I will. But Vusaik is really kind of, they're not monotheistic by any stretch, but Vusaik is kind of the pantheon, the most venerated in Kabul Kailish. And again, part of that is political. So how does all this add up? How does it all make sense, and how am I going to tie it into the 3rd season? So this is why we refresh ourselves, right? If you're playing in the Forgotten Realms or Eberron or whatever, some published campaign world, read the stuff so that you know it, know it. And then the adventures will come out of those seeds of locations and ideas. There's one more place that I had the foresight to write down a little bit about, and that's Tog Itagi. This is a hamlet of modest size to the north of Yashirin Mabad. It is nestled in the foothills of the mountains at the mouth of the river which feeds Mukadas Suv. Most of the people there are miners, farmers, or fishermen, but the hamlet has had a long reputation for hosting a very old shrine to the earth god inside of a sacred cave to the north of the hamlet. So I threw in a little bit of a different variety. And again, this is a hamlet, so there might be like 60 people that live there total. But I thought, like, well, what would make a hamlet any more special? Number one, its geographical location. And number two, it has this little shrine. It's not a big temple, just a little shrine nestled into a cave somewhere. So what kind of adventures can we get out of that? Who knows? So that's a little bit about the setting. And I think knowing your setting is important. If you are working on your own campaign stuff, just build a couple towns. Build a region, build a couple towns, build some geographical features and places for the characters to explore and have adventures. That's where we start. So that gets you on the same page as me. Now the real work begins. How on earth do I come up with ideas for adventures? Another thing that I did as well was I found pictures. Pictures that were inspiring. So I found like this really elaborate, ornate city, and I decided to make it, it's got kind of like a classical, almost like Babylonian vibe to it, with big buildings and columns and fountains and domed, kind of Byzantine architecture. And that is my symbol of Poitex Shahar, just this massive ancient city, wrought of stone and marble and just really, beautiful features. For Kadimgi Kala, because it was an ancient city, but then it's built up on top of it, I actually was kind of inspired by like Jerusalem, and other old cities in the ancient world where, they have modern stuff just kept building up over other cities, right? And you have that all throughout the world. So here's another tip as a DM when you're thinking about building your worlds is, you don't have to go deep into fantasy. You can look at our real world and history and find plenty of inspiration and story ideas and settings that are really cool. What exists in the ruins below the current keep of Kadimki Kala? Well, maybe we'll find out. So there's a story seed. Do I create some kind of opportunity for adventure? Some opportunity to explore the ruins. What's under there? Who's under there? That's another option. Yashirin Mabad is a town near the sacred lake. Now, what could be happening there? Well, let's see. Maybe some bad guys are doing raids. Maybe one of the hordes, the barbarian hordes, has decided to go there and do a raid. Or maybe another kingdom has come and they're invading, knowing that this sacred lake, they use it for some other purpose other than what it was intended. Maybe they're digging out or dredging out some massive moat, and then they're going to break through the last bit and open up the lake and flood out this other part of the land. It could be as simple as like stealing water for irrigation. Right over the border, they want to do this or that, and they're going to steal water from the lake, and now you've created this political problem. So maybe there could be some deeper context there. Or even the little hamlet, Togi Tagi. Maybe that, that shrine to the earth god nestled into the mountains has become overrun with some creatures who have emerged from those caves, and they want to reclaim the caves and the mountains, and some mysterious thing has happened, So those are all story threads, all possibilities. Now, Poitex Shahar is a capital. It's a metropolis, 50,000 people. You can have an entire campaign and never leave that city. There's political intrigue going on. There's factions, different competitive factions within both the theocracy and just socially. So I thought about that, and I have some notes about that too. So the factions of Kabul Kailish. So the theocracy is based strongly on a balanced respect for all divinities, but the most prevalent is the water goddess Husseik. For as long as anyone remembers, the people of Kabul Kailash have believed that the lake Muqaddas Suv is sacred and the water has healing properties. Ooh, see, I forgot about my own thing. It has healing properties. What kind of healing properties? Who knows? Maybe that's why other people want to steal water from that lake. Maybe they want to divert water from that lake. Maybe there's some plot from a criminal organization to start bottling up that water, you know, filling up huge casks and reservoirs with that water and then using it in some kind of alchemical fashion. And maybe that creates a problem, and the adventurers can choose, you know, are they going to be on the side of the theocracy and go defend the lake, or are they maybe going to join that criminal faction? The current leader of the theocracy is His Holiness Kor Paigambar, chosen of water, a male dragonborn. He is a council of 5 patriarchs and matriarchs, each representing one of the divinities of Nuof Otmai. Each of the patriarchs and matriarchs has a dozen high priests or priestesses who in turn have dozens of clerics serving under them, managing temples and shrines throughout the country. So there's your structure. The theocracy also has the Muqaddas Jangchilar, an order of holy warriors who serve the justice of the theocracy. The majority of the Jangchilar are paladins and monks, but there are also some assassins who handle more discreet tasks when necessary. See, that's all stuff that I created a year ago, and I forgot about it. Now it's cool. This is why I'm refreshing myself. Then the next faction that I made was the Red Star. This is a loose alliance of criminal gangs throughout the country who seek power and desire control over territory. They are known to steal from the theocracy whenever possible and often seek to corrupt local officials in order to further their own means. Their members are tattooed with a red star, usually on their forearms. The Togli Odamlar. These are barbarians who live in the hills and mountains to the north of the country. They have no respect for the authority of the theocracy, and they often raid hamlets, caravans, and mining operations. They are fierce fighters who never travel alone. Then we have the Quoshin, which I employed in the summer sessions. This is a dwarven barbarian horde who claims to have been the original inhabitants of the region. They raid hamlets and caravans and then move on from place to place. It is said that they have an uneasy truce with the Togli Adamlar. And then the Khazal Iblis. These are wild creatures who appear to be small red demons. Many believe that they are sent by Deepa to create chaos throughout Nuof Otmai. They are unorganized and mischievous in nature, typically stealing wealth from anyone, regardless of affiliation. They can be violent when threatened. Okay, so those are some factions. And of course, you know, I can always expand on that. Maybe some new faction will emerge during Season 3. But that gives me other opportunities, too. So if the players decide that they, you know, I can give them a whole bunch of adventure options, but if they don't take the bait, then I, as the DM, have to respond. And a big part of being a master DM is developing an ability to be fluid and to improvise when necessary. So now we get to the next step in my brain thinking. I have a bunch of characters. We have Neely's character, who she has named Mantra, who is a tiefling paladin and an outlander. So that outlander component and paladin component and tiefling component tells me that I don't want her to start off in Poitex Shahar. I want her to arrive there. How she gets there is what we're going to figure out right now. So I'm going to make a couple notes while I'm doing this. Now, a lazy DM would just be like, okay, you guys are all in a bar, you're all in an inn, and you're adventurers who've known each other for a long time. Okay, I could do that, but I think it would be cooler for these newbie players to have a little bit of a connection before the main game. So sometimes I run what's called a prelude. And I started doing this back in the early 90s when I would run Vampire the Masquerade. And it would kind of be a way to get the vampires to know each other and have loose alliances before the main game brings them all together. And I think I'm going to do preludes for the adventurers here for Season 3. So Mantra is going to be... I'm just going to write wild. She's out in the wild somewhere She's an outlander, but she's going to have to come to Poitext. She's coming to the capital. All right, Skyla's character, Elixia, is a druid, wood elf, entertainer. So, some people might be like, well, a druid wouldn't be in a city. That's not true. Druids can be in cities. However, story-wise, I could also have her kind of start off in the Outland. So maybe she knows Mantra. Maybe they've adventured together, or maybe they'll meet in the Prelude and adventure together, and then somehow they have to end up at Poitext. So somehow everybody's got to end up in the capital, because that's where I want to start the game. Then Matthew's character, Yomi, who is a sorcerer, he's an outlander, and he's a dragonborn. So he's an outlander and a dragonborn and a sorcerer. So maybe he would start off in the wild as well. So Yomi is going to be wild, and he's going to Poitext. So I'm going to have him in a pile with Neely's character, Mantra. And Skyla's character, I still haven't figured out where she's going to be yet. She could be in that pile. She could be with somebody else. All right, Tony's character, Kadamon, is a forest gnome bard. He's a folk hero. Forest gnome bard folk hero. So he could absolutely be traveling. Folk heroes are typically people who travel a lot anyway, because they're like kind of the common person's hero, the commoner's hero. But he's a forest gnome. So maybe he wouldn't start, maybe he doesn't live in the city, but he's going to the city. So he's not an outlander, but he's a forest gnome. So maybe he's more rural. Elixia is a wood elf druid entertainer. Wood elf druid, forest gnome, bard, folk hero, entertainer. There's a connection there. So as a DM, I'm thinking right now, how do I have these people connecting? And I'm just thinking out loud. I've got a forest gnome bard who's a folk hero, which could explain how this person's kind of in a more rural setting, going from hamlet to hamlet or little town to town, and, you know, involved in nature, supporting nature, but he's also an entertainer. But perhaps along the way he has come to know this wood elf, Elixia, who is a druid and an entertainer. So entertainer, folk hero, and a bard. Well, so she's an entertainer. She has proficiency in musical instruments. So they could be a band. They could be. That might be cheesy. I don't know. But they could, not necessarily even a band, but maybe they've come to travel together out of safety. You know, when you're out in the wilds and you're more rural, there's a lot more encounters and bad things that can happen. So they've banded together out of necessity. So I feel like the bard, forest gnome, folk hero, and the druid, wood elf, entertainer have a natural fit. So I'm going to keep them in a pile. So Kadamon and Elixia are going to be rural, which could also be wild. I'm thinking right now that all four of them could be together, and they're all going to get to the capital. Still don't know why or how. Don't know what the draw is there, but we're going to set that up. The last one is Beecher's character, which, oh, God. So Beecher is a warlock, fallen Asimar with a criminal background. Now, that's an easy fit for just having him start in the city. Maybe he's the odd man out, because I literally have 5 people. He's the last one. He's the 5th one. He's the odd man out. Maybe he's in the city already. But how does he know them? 2 options. Number 1, I keep running through, how does he know them? How does he know them? Did they meet before? Was there some epic event? What's in his background? He's a criminal. What else? What else could connect them? Or I just say he doesn't know them. And I let destiny blow to the wind, or whatever that expression is. You know what I mean? Like somehow he doesn't know them, but they're going to all meet up in the capital. And how is this warlock with a criminal background, a fallen Asimar, how is he going to group up with these people? Sometimes that's the hardest part as a DM, is just thinking, how did they group up? But my gut, my instinct, decades of D&D experience is telling me, don't make it some lame, superficial connection. Have them meet up organically. Have them role-play meeting up. So I'm going to leave Beecher out. He's going to be over there. So Olin is going to already be in the city. Okay, so this begins the plotting. This begins, how do I set this up? I'm going to have a prelude adventure for Mantra and Yomi that brings them together out in the wilds somewhere and then lures them towards Poitax Chahar. Then I'm going to have a prelude adventure for Kadamon and Elixia, where they are traveling in rural areas, out in the wilds, whatever. But again, something is going to bring them to Poitax Chahar. And then Olin, he's going to be in Poitax Chahar already, but how is he going to meet them? So, a couple ways to connect characters. I'm just thinking out loud here. This is behind the screen for a reason, right? So, the draw of adventure and opportunity is an easy connector. If you're a DM, you have some NPC who has an opportunity for the characters to make money, to find adventure and rewards and treasure, right? That's an easy lure. Option 2 as a plot hook could be a threat. A threat that, even though these people aren't connected, there's a common threat. Someone or something or some organization is after them. And now they have to band together because this common threat, if they don't band together, could destroy them. Okay, so that's another thing. A noble cause, a noble calling. So maybe someone in the theocracy needs their help. That draws them together. So I have to think about this because as the DM, those story threads are just, that's not an adventure. Those are just what connects them. And what happens if they go for it? If they go for it, great. That creates a story arc, which could lead off into multiple different adventures. What happens if they don't go for it? That could be challenging. So a lot of times in a campaign, it begins with like the mission. You know what I mean? Like some NPC has, well, there's, I need to hire a group of adventurers and I'm forming a company, and if you'll get 10% of the profits plus whatever you can carry if you help me do this or that, right? And then that's the lure of adventure. But typically, it's just like casting. If an NPC is hiring a bunch of people, they want to hire a variety of people for different skill sets. So what skill sets do we have? We have a Paladin. That's your tank. We have a sorcerer who's a blaster. We've got a warlock who is kind of a blaster too. We've got a druid who is a nice mix, actually. She can fight, but she can also heal. She's got a bunch of advantages. And then Kademon is a bard, so he's able to buff people. He won't be fantastic in combat, but he's definitely support. So as a group, and many people's comments have mentioned this during the character creation, they are squishy. Tactically speaking, they're squishy. I'll tell you as a DM why that's not a problem for me. Because I grew up with, playing in campaigns where we would build a party to be a strong adventuring party. We'd make sure all the roles were filled, right? So we weren't super squishy. We had a balance, right? And it's a good idea. You should do that. If you're building a new party, in a meta sort of way, work with the other players and figure out what roles need to be filled. But on the flip side, if you've played D&D a lot, you know that inevitably you'll come across a point in your gaming life where all the cool classes have been picked and you're stuck with, oh, we need a healer or we need a whatever. And it's like the class that you don't want to play. But you got to take your turn. Everybody's got to play that one role. Now, that's your mindset. That's your fixed mindset saying like, well, I don't want to be a cleric, right? That's my personal thing, which is funny because my very first character in D&D ever was a cleric, and he was awesome. But, sometimes you get stuck with the class or role in the party that you don't want to play. And I realized after years that, like, yes, it's cool to build a well-balanced party, strategically speaking. But at the same time, it can kind of suck if somebody gets stuck playing something just for the sake of the well-balanced party. So instead, I realized that as the DM, I want to facilitate my players being able to play whatever they want. Whatever they want. So that's what this is. This is the students picking whatever they wanted, regardless of tactical wisdom, regardless of whether it's smart, right? Like, and I know a lot of you guys were like, Beecher should make a Hexblade Warlock. He didn't want to. He wants a fancy familiar. That's, I mean, and I support that. So here's where I'm going with all this. If you have a squishy party, if you have an unbalanced party, as the DM, I'm going to let them do that because I'll fill in the extra roles with NPCs. Now, I'm not just going to give them to them. I'm not just going to be like, here are some followers. Here are 4 fighters that will just be your tanks. Like, that's kind of lame. I want it to be integrated into the story. I want it to be part of the plot. They have to earn those NPCs. They have to make friends with people. They have to inspire people who will join their cause. So for a more experienced group, that might be easy. For a new group, that might be harder. But we'll see. That's part of the fun of the game, is the unknown. So where are we at behind the screen today? We have figured out, we've refreshed ourselves on the locations. I have a bunch of ideas just based on the locations, just on the notes for those locations and what could happen there. Poitox Shahar is the setting where they're all going to meet up, but I have to get them there. Now we've broken them up into groups, so we have the Paladin Tiefling and the Dragonborn Sorcerer, who are both Outlanders. They're going to be together. I don't know how to figure that out yet. Let's deal with them. So we know, based on my notes now, that they're going to be out in the wild. What is something that could have brought them together? Outlander. What is something that brought them together? What could bring together a Tiefling Paladin and a Dragonborn Sorcerer? Well, a common threat. So here's where, as a DM, I have to balance my creation of the story with my players. One way to do it would be, as the DM, I come up with the idea. What brings them together? And I create some event. Maybe there's some traumatic event. They were from the same village. It got raided by a barbarian horde. They were one of the handful of survivors. They banded together, and from that day forward, they've always had each other's backs, right? Boom, done. I could be done. Or I could talk to my players. So DMs, here's a tip. If you want your players to be invested, let them invest in the game. Give them some input. So what I can do is bring Matthew and Neely together and explain this quandary. You guys know each other. Let's figure out how. What's the background? What draws these two Outlanders together? What's kept them together? Because they're not new. They're not level 1. They're level 3. So they've survived multiple things. They've adventured together. What was it? Now, I think that's what I'm going to do. And it's not me being lazy. I could come up with 100 different plot hooks to bring them together. But I think, thinking now, I'm sharing my thought process with you as the DM. I think they're going to be more invested in these characters and in this adventure if there was something that happened that they came up with that brought them together. And then, once they come up with that, we'll run a prelude adventure, which has them adventuring together and gets them to Poitex Shahar. Now, I don't know what that's going to be yet. I got to figure that out. Now, let's go to Caedmon and Elixia. Similar situation. What brought these two people together? Now, they might say that they might like the whole traveling band idea. Like, you know, there's this forest gnome and this wood elf, and maybe they met in the forest. They were camping separately, and one heard the other's music being played, right? And they got into it, and they decided, hey, you know, they're good traveling company. And along the way, they've gone from hamlet to hamlet, town and villages, and they've performed together. And, you know, maybe they've gotten into some fights with some bandits or whatever. But somehow along the way, they've stuck together. And they appreciate each other. And now something is going to bring them to the capital city. So that could be, again, me coming up with a little backward storyline, just like that, just how I summarized it right now, and then I could leave it. Or I could ask them, what's something that brought you guys together? So if they, as players, think of the idea of what brought them together, they might be more invested in those characters, right? And especially DMs, if you're trying to get players who are new to understand the game, one of the biggest things that you have to understand is that they are this character. While they're playing, they are that character. And yet, that character is not them. It is not who they are. It's a complicated thing, really, when you think about it. But it also makes sense. You know, they're playing a role. You watch a movie, for example, and Ben Affleck is in that movie, right? Now, Ben Affleck might be Ben Affleck in whatever movie he's in, whether he's playing Batman or he's playing someone else. Matt Damon might be Jason Bourne in some movies, but in Ocean's 11, you know, he might just be the youngest kid on the crew. But he's always kind of Matt Damon, which is fine. You know, some people when they play D&D, they don't really get into role-playing their character, you know, as an entire entity, right? They just, it's kind of them as a person playing their character. And, you know, I think a lot of, especially younger players or newer players, you know, that's how it is. I have friends who've been playing the game for decades, and no matter what race and class combination they play, it's just them playing the game, and that's fine. But if you want to go deep into role-playing, you know, and you want to think about really becoming that character, those are acting skills, and anyone can learn how to do that. It's just playing, just like you did when you were a child and you would dress up and pretend that you were something else. It's just putting on another mask. And those chops, those skills can be developed over time. And improvisation is a big part of role-playing games. As the DM, you have to improvise. As the player, you have to improvise. There's no script. So I like this idea, as I'm coming through with it, of giving them the input. Now, what happens, DMs? What happens, as we're behind the screen thinking about this, if they don't have any good ideas? Then I fall back on my own ideas, or I pitch them 3 different choices. Okay? And you could even, you know, I'm sure somewhere out there, probably in the DM's guide, are things to, like, how to link up a party. I don't use those resources, but I guarantee if you look online, there are probably, you know, 20 different articles for, like, story hooks for how to link up a party. But I'm going to let it be more organic. I want the players to be invested. I'm going to let them come up with it. And if they suck, if they don't come up with something good, I'll come up with something. That leaves Beecher's character, Olin, which you'd think is easy, but it might not be. So what I have to do as the DM is sit down with Beecher without everybody else and explain to him, hey, your character is going to be starting in the capital city. You have this fallen Aasimar warlock. Let's talk more about your pact. Let's talk more about your criminal background. What does it mean? What's your tie to the capital city? And then what is his character's motivation? So I have to figure out his character's motivation. Is he seeking redemption? Is he trying to be a better person? Does he have this dark past? Or is he kind of a, you know, an evil character who's pretending to be law-abiding, you know? That's something that I have to have a one-on-one with him. And then a prelude adventure that gets him into the narrative that will connect all these people for why they're coming to the capital. So that brings us to why they're coming to the capital. And you might be like, well, Bill, certainly as you're planning season 3, you have all these ideas. I don't. Guess what? Here's the thing. I had no control over season 2. I created a place. I had about 20 different adventure options. And guess what? The players did none of them. That's right, people. Everything you saw in season 2 was just a vast illusion. So season 3, I have probably 40 adventures. I'm not kidding. I have terrain made for season 3. I have minis that I've purchased specifically in the hopes that they'll take this adventure and then I could use that mini and create this NPC. I have maps. I have props made, but I'm not gonna railroad the players into those adventures. I will let them choose their path. And that can be very difficult if you're a starting DM. You know, sometimes you put all this effort into an adventure, and then if you let go of the reins, the players choose to not go on your adventure, and now you have nothing prepared. That's why I often say with starting groups, as a collective, you know, before you start playing the game and rolling the dice, just agree that you're going to go on the adventure. Just, you know, have the players agree like, hey, we'll play through this adventure. You know, and do that for the first few games that you're playing in, because you have to develop your gaming chops first before you could just be like, I'm letting go of the reins and chaos will rule. I've been doing this for decades. Literally, this fall, actually like right now, is the 40th anniversary of my gaming. I started playing in 1978 when my brother was in school and he taught me. So I'm pretty confident that after that many years, I can improv an entire campaign. Now, that said, remember that I'm not just bullshitting. Like, I have worlds built, I have documents, I have adventures. It's all built. The improv comes in and letting the players choose. So I have a buffet of options, okay? Now, if the players just choose to go to the chicken fingers at the buffet, then I have to flesh out that a little more. But I have many, many, many options for them to choose from for the adventures. So that about wraps it up for this episode of Behind the Screen. I have figured out and refreshed myself on the world, the setting. I have figured out the groupings for these characters, and I will allow them to organically work with me to develop a narrative for how they're connected, and have a prelude adventure that you'll be able to watch to show how they get to the capital. And then we will have everybody at the table. I'm very excited. So as always, I want to say thank you for everybody who has supported the channel and has subscribed. Thank you for spreading the word on all of the different social media. And if you are benevolent and generous, you can always look down in the description and donate directly to the TV club. The money there goes to the kids, and they spend it on a lot of different things like props and accessories for their shows, and set pieces and competitions, film festivals, field trips, all that kind of stuff to support them. So thanks again, and we'll see you. All right, thanks for watching that video. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and don't forget to check out a lot of the other great content that I have on the channel. It's really awesome. You should check it out. I know what I'm talking about.